Welcome into a brand new edition of the Sports Hub Patriots podcast, week one preview edition of the Sports Hub Patriots podcast. I'm Alex Barth from 98.5 The Sports Hub and 98.5thesportshub.com, recording here on Wednesday afternoon with the Patriots, getting ready to take on the Cincinnati Bengals to kick off the 2024 season. So to join us to look at the matchup, a guy a lot of you in New England are probably familiar with. He's back home in Cincinnati now, though. That is Mike Petraglia. He covers the Bengals for CLNSCincy.com and host the Jungle Roar podcast, somebody who I've podcasted with quite a few times. I'm sure he's about to make some snide joke about that as I introduce him. How's it going, Trags?
Freaking Barth. You're the best. It's good to be back on the multimedia platforms with you talking NFL football. I will say that much. I have had, it's been a pretty long off season between Joe Burrow's monitoring of his wrist rehab and of course of late, and I know we'll get into it, the Jamar Chase hold in, not hold out, but hold in for Justin Jefferson type money. But I'm ready for the football season to begin Sunday at Paycor, definitely.
And let's not forget T. Higgins, too, something that we obviously followed very closely here in New England until that got set up. So that kind of leads me to my first question. Just, you know, the Patriots fan mindset going in is this is a rebuild. It might be a long year. And just are there flashes from the young guys and the rookies? Before we get to the matchup itself, just what is the mindset in Cincinnati around those covering the team, the fan base for this team heading into this game and this season?
It's a good question, Alex. It is get off to a fast start or else. The Bengals are 1-9, 1-9 in the 10 games in the first 2 weeks of the Zach Taylor era since 2019. And that is something they've got to fix. They have got to get off to a better start. They've got to win Sunday. They have got to show their fan base. They've got to show the coaching staff, the ownership. Most importantly, they've got to demonstrate to themselves, all good teams do, that they are serious about contending from start to finish in the AFC North, in the AFC, getting past teams like the Ravens, like the Steelers, like the Browns in their own division, getting past the Chiefs. It starts with beating an inferior team in week one at home. That is non-negotiable. I don't care. I don't want to hear anything about, well, week one is its own animal. Upsets happen, blah, blah, blah. That's not what this is. The Bengals know that. Week two, they have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Then they come home for Washington. Then they go on the road for Carolina. That's a 3-1 start. It should be. And the Bengals know that. And they certainly aren't going to publicly and certainly announce that to the media and to the world that they need to start 3-1, but they know inside that locker room a 3-1 start at the worst is non-negotiable.
All right, so you mentioned the 1-9 record in weeks 1 and 2 under Zach Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any common thread there? Is there something specific that they've struggled with early in the season that Patriots fans should look for on Sunday, or is it just kind of, I don't want to say coincidence, but you know, across the board, different reasons that they've struggled to start strong?
Alex, they've been beaten up in the trenches in most of those 9 losses. Take a look at last year. It's a great example. Yes, Joe Burrow was coming off the calf injury. No question about that. He was not 100%, wasn't even close to 100%. But the Browns came out, Nick Chubb and company, and just handed it to them in Cleveland, just pounded and grounded. And what did we hear from Gerard Mayo on Wednesday? That's what the Patriots want to do to the Bengals, because the Bengals had teams like the Browns, Ravens, and Steelers, and the Tennessee Titans, who were not good last year, run it right up the gut at them. And the Bengals were powerless to stop it. And now the Bengals have gotten rid of DJ Reader. He was in Detroit, and they have replaced him with Sheldon Rankins from Houston. I think a terrific pickup. But they don't have a lot of depth in the middle of the defensive line. And that's what Gerard Mayo and the Patriots are going to test early on. And that has been the kryptonite of the Bengals in these very slow starts in the Zach Taylor era. They've been really getting beaten up while it takes Joe Burrow maybe 4 to 5, 6 weeks to get warmed up to find out what he really has in the offense. The Bengals don't want to go through that again, so they went out and they tried to address that with guys like Sheldon Rankins. They drafted Chris Jenkins out of Michigan, and they have B.J. Hill. Those are three guys they think they can rely on. But they also had McKinley Jackson, another draft pick who they were depending on, go down with an injury in training camp. They're thin in the middle of the defensive line, and I think the Patriots are going to test that on Sunday.
Yeah, like you said, Gerard Mayo mentioned control the line of scrimmage 3 times in his opening statement on Wednesday. Talked multiple times about controlling the game through winning at the line of scrimmage, running the football, things like that. Obviously, something the Bengals have struggled with. You also mentioned, at least last year, part of the reason the Bengals got off to a slow start was Joe Burrow was coming off an injury. Here we are again. He's working his way back from a wrist injury. Where is he at this point? Are Patriots fans going to see a fully healthy Joe Burrow? And one thing I'd add to that, talking to Jonathan Jones today, and this kind of struck me, he was asked about Joe Burrow, and he said, yeah, he's really a veteran quarterback now. And it's crazy to think, for me, like, I still think of Joe Burrow as this kid, but he is becoming one of the veterans in the NFL. Does that reflect in what you've seen from him on the field?
Yes, it does. He's entering his 5th NFL season. And I had someone in the offseason make this comparison to me, and it's been made before, but this was a different way. He's like Tom Brady. He beats you before the ball is snapped, and he beats you with his progressions. And I think later in his career, Joe Burrow will become better and better physically at throwing the football, the art of throwing the football and the mechanics, just like Tom Brady became better and better and more refined. Burrow knows where everybody is going to be. He anticipates extraordinarily well. That's what Jonathan Jones, I think, was really referring to. And the Patriots have to be ready for Burrow to move the chess pieces on the board and not get too far out of position. And that's what I think, if you're a Patriots secondary coach and your defensive coordinator, you have to make sure your guys are not really leveraged out of position, because Burrow will take advantage of that. In terms of physically, I don't even think Joe Burrow knows, and he said this on Wednesday, until he has to brace himself with that right wrist on a fall to the turf, he doesn't know how that wrist is going to respond to real physical treatment, like getting pounded. And I think that's one thing we have to watch very closely on Sunday. The Patriots are going to want to really turn guys loose on him, get to the quarterback, and when Burrow has to fall to the ground and his wrist is exposed, how does he handle it?
All right, let's talk about the guys he's throwing to. Ja'Marr Chase. And we're recording this Wednesday at about 5:30. So obviously these things can change very quickly. But as we're recording this now, Trags, what the hell is going on with Ja'Marr Chase?
Okay. The quick read is he was at practice, shorts and shells, on Wednesday, came out across the street from Paycor Stadium to the practice fields, was walking with T. Higgins, had his uniform on, was holding his helmet in his hand, and he practiced. He was limited in practice. He was out there for everyone to see. And my feeling on this and my read on this is he's not doing this unless he's preparing to play on Sunday. And my gut instinct in watching the Bengals over the years, they've done this before with Joe Mixon. They did it last year with Joe Burrow. They've done it in other cases where they get a contract of a major player either signed or extended. Extended last year with Burrow, extended, we'll see it with Ja'Marr Chase. But I think Ja'Marr Chase will have a contract extension before he steps on the field on Sunday. And one other thing I will tell you, Joe Burrow talked about Ja'Marr Chase in the active what's the word I want to look for?
Tense.
Active tense. Thank you.
Yeah.
He talked about Ja'Marr Chase in the active tense about what he expects from Ja'Marr on Sunday. That's not by mistake. If Joe Burrow expects Ja'Marr Chase to play, then I think Ja'Marr Chase is going to be out there playing, because there's nobody closer to Ja'Marr Chase on that team than Joe Burrow. You could certainly make an argument T. Higgins is right there with him, and you'd be probably right about that. But if Joe Burrow is expecting Ja'Marr Chase to play, but saying, I don't know how much he's going to play, that's a Ja'Marr Zach question. Certainly, that being said, I think Ja'Marr Chase is going to be on the field. He's certainly not going to do what he did 2 years ago, Alex, when they opened against Pittsburgh at Paycor Stadium, and he played every single snap on like a 90-degree day when it was a boiling hot day, 1 o'clock kickoff like it'll be on Sunday in Cincinnati. He's not going to play every single offensive snap, far from it. But I think he's going to be out there long enough for Gerard Mayo and Marcus Covington, to have to account for him with somebody like Christian Gonzalez. And I think that is the point of having Jamar Chase ready and active for this game.
Yeah, I just wonder, what kind of shape is he in? And I don't mean like, I'm sure physically he's in fine shape, but football shape, he only practiced 3 or 4 times the whole summer. And
he
does
didn't
he
even
only
do that, Alex. He didn't even do that.
He didn't even do that? Okay.
No, I mean, he was out there for a couple of those very light practices after the final preseason game, and then they get a 3-day. They came back from a 3-day weekend, and he was out Sunday and Monday. But when reporters were allowed back on the Wednesday, he was nowhere to be seen until he walked into the practice bubble after stretching had already begun, and he wasn't taking part in practice. So this is really his first all-on engaged activation in practice with the Bengals.
So I just wonder, football shape, can he go out there, play a full game, take the hits? But the other thing is, if he plays 10 or 15 plays, he can do tremendous damage in 10 to 15 plays. And you mentioned Christian Gonzalez. I'm really interested to see if it's Gonzalez on Chase when he's on the field, or if they go with the old Belichick strategy of the number 1 corner on the number 2 receiver.
I was just going to say.
Is it Christian Gonzalez on T. Higgins with Jonathan Jones, or Marco Wilson on Jamar Chase with help over the top? Now, they don't have Devin McCourty anymore in that role. It's kind of been Jalen Hawkins, Kyle Duggar in those spots in practice, but I do wonder how that matchup goes. I will say Gonzalez against Higgins would be a great matchup because they're just both very physically dominant. Not that Chase isn't, but you have these 2 really big apex athletes. That would be fun to watch for me, but you've covered both these teams, and obviously it's not a Belichick defense anymore. It's guys that coached under Belichick, but how do you kind of see the matchups playing out?
Well, I think it's great that you bring up Belichick, because Gerard Mayo learned a lot about defense from Belichick, obviously. There's no secret there. And I think he understands he has to get a read on what Gonzalez is more comfortable with. Is he more comfortable handling a bigger, stronger receiver? Then yes, you put him on T. Higgins and cloud Jamar Chase. I will tell you, I think the Patriots are aware that Jamar Chase hates being clouded, and it annoys him. He can still get open and he can still make his plays, don't get me wrong. But Jamar Chase has said many times in the past, yeah, they clouded me and there was not much I could do. Well, that tells me, and I'm sure the Patriots are aware of that, that you're probably likely going to see Gonzalez on a bigger receiver like T. Higgins, and then you're going to probably see Jamar Chase maybe with some cloud coverage. But my point about Jamar Chase actually being on the field, you have to account for that in your pass defense. If you're DeMarcus Covington, the defensive coordinator, you have to account for that. If Jamar Chase isn't in the game, there isn't as much pressure on you to have to cloud. Maybe you can bump and run, get a little bit closer in your coverage. Another factor I would look for in this game on Sunday: how do the Bengals use Mike Gesicki, former Patriot, against that Patriots defense? He loves to use the seam route. Joe Burrow hasn't done that a lot in his time with the Bengals. We're going to see a lot more of that this year. And one other thing you should look for from Burrow, the dump off to Chase Brown and Zach Moss.
So that's all. Actually, real quick, because I want to touch on the offensive line, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. It's a Patriots podcast, your Bengals reporter, T. Higgins. Should Patriots fans have any hope about him kind of looking ahead to next offseason?
Well, he's not going to look ahead now. He is zoomed in on this season and trying to do the best he can for T. Higgins and for the Bengals, because he knows a huge 9-figure contract is absolutely, positively out there waiting for him. No, he doesn't want to get injured, but athletes don't think like that. They go out and they do what they do. They play. But T. Higgins has a 9-figure contract out there waiting for him. I think he'd be a great fit for the Patriots. I just don't.
Are the Bengals going to be in Are the Bengals going to be in play for that 9-figure contract, or do you think this
I
is his last
doubt
year in
it.
Cincinnati?
I especially doubt it if the Chase deal gets done. I mean,
Okay.
if there is no Chase deal, and the specter out there that they lose both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, um, I think maybe the Bengals would have some inclination to address T again. At this point in time, I think T is out the door after this year with Cincinnati, and it would make sense that a team like the Patriots would go after a guy like T. Higgins, who is one of the best receivers at the apex, as you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier. He plays the ball at the top of the arc better than any receiver in the National Football League. He is one of the best receivers I've seen doing that since Randy Moss. I mean, and I don't say that lightly.
I know you don't.
He is a tremendous receiver at the top of the arc.
And that's the kind of guy to me that would be a great fit with Drake May. But we'll have you on a year from now to talk about T. Higgins.
Okay.
I want to keep it to the game. One more thing: when the Bengals were on offense, the Patriots pass rush took a big hit this offseason. Christian Barmore dealing with a medical condition. He won't
Right.
be playing. They traded Matthew Judon. They're still going to need to find ways to generate pressure against the Bengals offensive line that was overhauled this offseason. They added a couple pieces, including old friend Trent Brown. He's now there. They drafted Amarius Mims in the first round. I know there's some guys dealing with injuries. Trent wasn't practicing late in camp there. Mims is dealing with an injury now. Orlando Brown also factors in here. What's the latest on the Bengals tackle situation?
Well, Orlando Brown is newly minted as one of the 8 Bengals captains for this year, along with Ted Karras. So
Another
you have
former
Orlando
Patriot.
Brown and Ted Karras as the captains. There's a lot. The reason I bring that up, there's a lot of leadership on that offensive line, and that's not by mistake. The Bengals know that their weakness in the past on offense has been having Joe Burrow get killed in the pocket. They don't want that happening anymore. Trent Brown's an interesting case. He is going to start on Sunday. That has been confirmed by Zach Taylor, was confirmed on Monday. How many snaps can he play? Zach Taylor was asked that on Wednesday, and he indicated that they expect him to make a pretty full go at playing the whole game. I don't know if that's going to be actually the case, because this is a guy that had to take himself out of several practices and had to take himself out of both joint practices this summer with the Bears and the Colts. And they do have Amarius Mims, who was limited on Wednesday, possibly available. If not him, Cody Ford would come in and spell Trent Brown at right tackle. That's where, if I'm Gerard Mayo and DeMarcus Covington, I am testing Trent Brown early and often. When he's on his game, he is a terrific pass blocker. You guys know that. He can be when his footwork is on, he can be very, very good. But again, he hasn't practiced that much. He's a 10-year pro. I understand that. But you have to test Trent Brown's physical ability and his conditioning early and often in the game on Sunday, I think.
How about when the Patriots have the ball? A lot has been made this week of the connection that, the Patriots are kind of jumping into the Bengals-Browns rivalry with Alex Van Pelt, Jacoby Brissett, revisiting those matchups when Brissett was with Van Pelt in Cleveland. What can you tell us about those matchups and how much of that, with the different surrounding cast around those two, how much of those matchups do you think is applicable to the game on Sunday?
Go back and watch the Halloween game, October 31st, 2022, when Jacoby Brissett took apart the Bengals. Why did he take apart the Bengals? He had Nick Chubb. And the Browns were able to ground and pound, and then the intermediate spaces of the field became open like the Red Sea. And Brissett was dumping off the ball in the flat. He was hitting crossers. The words to use to describe Jacoby Brissett in that game: in rhythm. And Alex Van Pelt wants to get Jacoby Brissett in a rhythm early in the game on Sunday against Lou Anarumo's defense. The other thing I noted about what Gerard Mayo had to say on Wednesday was he said several times, Lou Anarumo loves to be aggressive. Well, that's code for play action. That's code for misdirection. When coaches talk in terms like that, they're giving hints as to what they really want to do. If they see that again, they praise the Bengals for being aggressive, but they are certainly going to try and use that aggressiveness against the Bengals. The problem is if you are leave some of those defenders unaccounted for, like a Trey Hendrickson, they'll wreck your game plan. And that's one thing I'd be concerned about if I'm the Patriots. You don't want Trey Hendrickson wrecking the game. So what do? If you are Jacoby Brissett and you have the ball in your hand, you are getting rid of the ball in under 2.1 seconds every single time.
Along the lines of Hendrickson, you mentioned off the top, kind of the Bengals have rebuilt their defensive front, and the Patriots offensive line, we really don't know right now. They've got Vidarian Lowe, who projects as a starting left tackle dealing with an injury, Sidy So, who projects as starting right guard dealing with an injury. They've worked Mike Onwenu at right tackle some after he was at guard for most of the summer. They've kind of been rotating guys at left guard.
Yeah, but back up there, Alex. I'm
Yeah.
surprised at Onwenu. I had him projected as a tackle all along, and then they move him inside to be a guard. I'm curious to see how the Patriots use him because I think he's one of the better physical talents on that offensive line.
I think so too, but it was kind of made clear this summer that he's at his best at guard. The problem is they don't necessarily have the bodies at tackle where they have the flexibility to do that.
Correct. And that to me is the fascinating give and take of what Gerard Mayo has to do, and probably really the essence of why, with that indecision, why Drake May is not the starting quarterback Jacoby Brissett is.
I'm with you. We're with you 100%. How can the Bengals take advantage of that? Are they in position? I know you mentioned that they tried to beef up this defensive line, tried to improve it. Are they in position to really take advantage of a Patriots offensive line that looks like it could be in for a rough season?
They better. I mean, all we've heard in the offseason is how the Patriots offensive line is a work in progress. And if you can't take apart an offensive line that is this much in turmoil and transition, then what are you going to do against Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Kansas City? What are you going to do then? And, the Bengals know this, I think, going in quietly. They know that front four, however they line up, is going to have to get some pressure on its own without blitzing. And I think you find out, first of all, are we getting through with our base defense? Are we getting through with the 4 defensive linemen, or do we need to bring more pressure? I'll give you another name to keep a very close eye on Sunday is Joseph Osai. He's been banged up his first 3 seasons in Cincinnati. Joseph Osai is ready for, I think, he's finally healthy. He is ready to break out this year and have a huge year for the Bengals. And frankly, I think the Bengals need him to have a big year because they have Hendrickson and Hubbard, and they are getting long in the tooth. They're still great players, and Hubbard's bouncing back from off-season ankle surgery. But they're still great players, but you need somebody behind them. Bengals need somebody behind those two, and Osai would be somebody who I think could step up and have a big day against, again, a Patriots offensive line that has a lot of question marks.
And you mentioned, just to go back a little bit, Brissett getting the ball out quick. And when I hear that, maybe it's not in 2.1 seconds, but just like safety blanket kind of guys. And for the Patriots this summer, that looked like the tight ends, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. The Bengals were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year when it came to covering tight ends. Did they do anything to address that in the offseason? Are they going to be better in that regard, or is that somewhere the Patriots should attack?
Well, you have Mike Hilton, who's one of the best nickelbacks in football, period. He's one of the best tacklers. He may have lost a step, and certainly that's why a couple of years ago they brought in Dax Hill. But the Bengals secondary has been revamped majorly. They brought back Von Bell after a year in Carolina. He is the leader, the vocal leader of that secondary. And you can tell in training camp, you could tell in preseason, they are playing with a lot more quickness and instinct. Last year, it was Dax Hill as the free safety, and there was a lot of hesitation. It was Dax Hill getting used to the calls and how to go about the mechanics of running the secondary. You don't have that with Von Bell. They also brought in Geno Stone. Geno Stone's going to be the free safety. Von Bell will be, playing closer to the line of scrimmage and run support a lot of the time. But the whole point to your question is, I think they're going to have better matchups on tight ends this year off the line of scrimmage than they did last year when Dax Hill had a lot of trouble just getting his secondary and his defense in the right look against what the offense was showing.
All right, before we wrap it up here, Trags, I got to ask you about this. You might roll your eyes, but I'm fascinated by this story. The new kickoff rule. I don't know how much they let you guys see of that. We haven't gotten to watch too much in practice here in New England, but what are you expecting from the Bengals kickoff return approach?
Oh, well, that's a $64 million question. And I think Darren Simmons told me earlier in the offseason, we're going to see how it plays out early in the season, then we'll make our adjustments. He also warned all of us, all of the media, don't judge too much on what you see in preseason because we're just learning the rules ourselves. That's what we're using training camp in the preseason and even the OTAs. That's what they used that for. Once the season gets going, I think Darren Simmons is going to use Evan McPherson, by the way, a special teams captain, Evan McPherson. They're going to use him for directional kicks and try to put teams inside the 20-yard line. They're going to use it like the punt. And I think that's the way Darren Simmons is viewing this. He's viewing the return game with certainly Charlie Jones back there returning kicks and Chase Brown returning kickoffs, punts and kickoffs respectively. You're going to see the kickoff game, return game evolve into something that resembles the punt return game.
He is Mike Petraglia, CLNSCincy.com and the Jungle Roar podcast. Definitely somebody to follow, especially leading into this week for Patriots fans as we wait to figure out what's going on with Jamar Chase and other things for the Bengals leading up to this matchup. Trags, thanks so much for joining us today.
Boy, this was too long coming. I want the NFL schedule makers to put the Patriots and Bengals together every single year just so I can give you grief every single year.
I love that because the Bengals are going to be towards the top of their division. So if they're playing the Patriots every year, the Patriots are probably towards the top of their division too. Maybe Joe Burrow, Drake May becomes a thing in a few years. Like
could. You never know.
Brady Manning-ish. I think there's a guy in Kansas City that might get in the way of that, but pending that,
has.
Right. So all right. So maybe it's not Brady Manning. Maybe it's like Roethlisberger Rivers. But
honestly, Alex, what do you think a realistic record for the Patriots is this year?
So it's harder to project this year, right? Because when does Drake May play?
Right.
I think if things kind of play out as we think they're going to, 5 wins, maybe 6. If Drake May really pops, and I mean not quite CJ Stroud, but let's say a step above what Mac Jones was as a rookie.
Right.
I think you might be able to start talking about 7 if he's like really elevating guys and he steps in early. But I think it's closer to that 5 number. I think most books have it at 4.5. And until we see Drake May really prove it, like Drake May as an unknown, I think that 4.5 number is about right.
I think if the Bengals don't get to 11 wins, there's going to be a lot of frustrated, angry Bengal fans in Houday Nation. That's what I think.
Well, if they don't win this one, is it so you covered the Patriots during the dynasty era, and the Bengals obviously aren't that, but the Patriots would lose week 1 and the sky would be falling. They'd go on to win the Super Bowl, but the sky would be falling. Would that be the Patriots fans can relate to that feeling? Is that what it would be in Cincinnati if the Bengals lose?
I will say this. I don't ever recall the Patriots losing a game like this in week 1, a game where their roster was clearly superior, brand new coach. I don't recall that happening. Maybe somebody out there can correct me.
Maybe not week 1, but they would always drop one dumb early season game. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they would lose like at Washington. I think I remember that back in 2003, 2004, something like that. Sure. But not this time, not at home against the Patriots when the Patriots come in with a brand new head coach. No, I something bizarre would have to happen on Sunday, but certainly that's not out of the realm of possibility. It happens all the time.
So actually that's what I wanted to ask you finally. If the Patriots do make this a game, and I actually I think this is going to be closer than people think. The number that's been out there is 9.5. I actually think the Patriots could sneak inside of that. I go back to that matchup in 22. I wonder if it's going to be similar where, a little different circumstances, but the Bengals early season, they've got guys who, Burrow's dealing with an injury. Chase was out. maybe they stumble out of the gate a little bit. The Patriots have that juice of a new head coach. And maybe they keep it close, but the Bengals just have the playmakers to make 1 or 2 plays late in the game to lock it up. But if the Patriots are going to make this close, how do they do that?
Ramondre Stevenson has a big game. Go back and look at that 2022 game and look at what Ramondre Stevenson did before Von Bell forced the fumble. They were running right through the Bengals, and they got themselves back in the game. And Jamar Chase ran a bad route that led to a turnover. And then the Bengals completely froze up, literally and figuratively, on offense. That's how that happens. They won't freeze up, obviously,
right.
but certainly the Bengals offense could come out of rhythm, and the Patriots could hang around and dominate in the run game. That's how the Patriots make this a game.
Good revenge game for Ramondre Stevenson after that fumble cost in the game at 22. Big revenge spot for him. All right, Trags, I said I'd keep you 20 minutes. We're over 30 now, so we'll wrap it up there. But I'm looking forward to talking to you again. Hopefully, I think the plan is right now to have you on Sunday morning, if you can still do that.
On the Sports Hub.
Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. We'll get an exact time to you if you follow at Sun Kickoff 98.5 on Twitter. I will update you again. Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff is back Sunday mornings, 8 to 10 on the Sports Hub every week. But until then, for Mike Petraglia, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the Sports Hub Patriots audio feed, wherever you get your podcast, to get this show and more Patriots sound from the station. And talk to you next time. Bye.